All right, hey guys, today we're going to talk about early colonization. And this is probably one of my favorite lessons to teach because, of course, it involves Jamestown. So I've done a lot of historical research on Jamestown through college and other times when I had to write papers and things. So hopefully I can share some of that information with you. So the essential questions are: name two moments in which it appeared Jamestown would fail. Explain one reason why the Jamestown colony did not fail, and provide examples of how the Massachusetts Bay Colony was extremely strict. All right, so here we start with Jamestown, Virginia. 1606, English investors were granted a charter by King James I of England to put colonies in the New World. Their joint stock company is going to be called the Virginia Company. December 20th, 1606, Virginia Company sends three small ships, the Susan Constant, the Godspeed, and Discovery, with 144 men to Virginia. They land on the banks of a river that they name James River after King James, and the colony becomes known as Jamestown. It's a pretty swampy land plagued with malaria, other diseases. Okay, I've been there. And the James River is pretty large, and the land is around it is lots of bugs, lots of swampy areas. So you can see where this might be a problem, especially way back then. So the Jamestown settlers were mainly townspeople from England, townspeople. So think about that. You see any issues with that? They've never raised livestock. They're pretty much upper class. So they've always had servants to do the work for them. Not all of them, but a lot of them have. And so they don't really understand manual labor, and they don't understand what it's like to rough it outside because they're townspeople. They had a governing council, but that group argued all the time. Lots of issues there. Says lawlessness, sickness from the disease, everything, and of course the always problem in any of these colonies, food shortages. By 1608 there were 190 settlers. End of that year, only 53 remained. Most of them had passed away, they died. So this is a major issue. I mean, that is crazy, the loss, their percentage of loss. It says one leader will emerge from the governing council. His name is Captain John Smith, and he will encourage trade with the Powhatan Confederacy, which does help the colonists through the first two winters. So you need to understand the Powhatan, the Native Americans, do make an alliance with this Jamestown colony initially. And it says Smith develops a relationship with the chief Powhatan. So a couple of pictures. Here is the Jamestown fort. So this is John White's rendering of it. He went along for the ride and drew a lot of the paintings and drawings that we see today of Jamestown. This is exactly how the fort is today. They have dug it up, and that was a long-standing, about 20 years ago, no one knew where the fort was, and they thought it had washed out the river. Now this part this here. All of this is gone, this part of the triangle, but the rest of this is in existence, is on land, has not washed out. So this is the James River here, and you can see how the fort lay against the river. Also, inside the fort, you see some interesting things here. There is a church inside the fort, a chancellor's row, governor's residence, quarters for housing, barracks for housing, depending on your status. The bulwarks here this one has a gun on that bulwark. And it talks about the natural landform and the landscape made it where this was the best suitable area. There's a burial ground in this area that I walked to. They were currently, at that time, this was 2 years ago in October, they were digging up the remains there, the bones and things. It says about 40% of the site has been excavated. So again, part of it's underwater, they believe, but all of this they have been able to find. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. All right, so I left it with a lot of them have died and they're having lots of issues. So it's a starving time. The Virginia Company started a program in England. Anyone who worked for the colony for 7 years would be offered a tract of land. 400 settlers come in 1609. So we've had a lot of death. Some leave. By 1609, England says, oh, if you want to come out here, people, you can leave your homeland and we'll help you get over there. You'll get land when you arrive after 7 years, blah, blah. 400 people sign up. 1609, unfortunately, becomes known as the starving time. Okay, so obviously you can tell that things don't go well there. Too many people, but not enough food becomes the issue. So people are coming in, there's just not enough to eat. The settlers begin to steal from the Native Americans, from the Powhatan that Smith had forged this relationship with, and the natives began attacking the settlers in retaliation. The settlers have nothing to eat now. Now that the Indians are not helping them, they have nothing. Okay, just keep in mind always, as European settlement does well, it's always at the hands of the Indians helping them. So the Indians are not helping. The settlers end up eating dogs, rats, snakes to stay alive. I have a picture here. This is National Geographic that came out about the time that they found the site, the real story of Jamestown. And I want you to see this lovely jewel, maybe. That is a rat jawbone because the settlers started eating the rats that came over with them on the ship. And it says the trapped settlers were reduced to eating horses, cats, dogs, and even these black rats that they brought aboard their ship to Virginia. They were weakened and sickened by hunger, and since they were drinking foul water from the river, contaminated wells. Survivors, some left, some just didn't make it, didn't survive. So it's pretty bad what happens to them. So by 1610, only 60 people are left out of the 400 that came over. They set out to leave. A gentleman by the name of Lord de War arrives from England, and he convinces the settlers to go back. And a harsh military regime was established. The thing is, the people, remember, were townspeople. They had never really manually worked in their life with their hands. They didn't know how to grow the food, and now the Indians have turned against them. So John Smith, who's in charge here, has a new saying, and it is, he that shall not work shall not eat. So if you're not helping to grow food or hunt the food, you're not eating the food. And all of a sudden, people started pitching in. They developed a 6-hour workday. So I think I have Smith. Here's John Smith. He is the militaristic, he that shall not work, shall not eat guy. Okay? Now there's another John, because they're always named John. John Rolfe began to experiment with tobacco within the colony. And his version of his tobacco plant was less bitter, and it sold fairly well back home in England. So demand shoots up for this tobacco, and much more manual labor is needed. I want to show you a picture of this, which is very famous. Going to be what saves the colony? Tobacco. Okay, so tobacco is going to save them. Rolfe trades tobacco with the natives, and thus is offered. So he builds the relationship back with the Indians. I told you in class the Indians really love tobacco. They particularly like Rolfe's version. So Rolfe starts selling to the Native Americans. They develop a relationship. And voila, the chief says, hey, John, Rolfe, want to marry my daughter? So Pocahontas is offered to John Rolfe. So it's always the guy with the money who gets the girl. Keep that in mind, fellas. So Jamestown is saved because of the tobacco, because they can generate income. They're selling it back home in England. And the natives, they have this relationship again. They're able to sell to them. All right. Also, bad news. Because these folks are not used to manual labor, they do not want to work tobacco. I mean, this is very, very time-consuming laborious. So they are going to want to bring in Africans to do the work. So you see the first introduction, and boy, this sets up our whole course. The first introduction of slaves, Jamestown, 1619. Okay? Headright system was to try to get more Europeans over, so it said for 50 acres of land, given for those who would be given to those who paid their passage, and 50 more acres for each family member who came that was over 15 years old. Okay. In 1619, same year as the Africans appear, women are sent to the colony. Okay, so one more thing, I want to show you John Rolfe's picture with the girl. Here's Rolfe, here's Pocahontas. Okay, so Maryland. Maryland is a colony that's founded by Lord Baltimore in 1634. I was in Baltimore this summer, and there's a hotel named the Lord Baltimore, so named after him. He is a converted Catholic. If you recall, Catholics are opposed by the Crown of England. That was in an earlier lesson, and Catholics are considered traitors. So Baltimore's plan is to have a colony where Catholics can practice freely and anyone else. So land northeast of Virginia is granted to Lord Baltimore, and it says he owns England's first proprietary colony, so he could govern it. He writes, with help, the Maryland Toleration Acts, which is just like it sounds. This is the colony of Maryland. They're going to tolerate any Christians who would like to come to the colony. All right, now we have Massachusetts. Two major colonies there, Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay. Plymouth's probably the one you're more familiar with. A group of Puritans in England challenged the Anglican Church, remember, on having too many Catholic traditions. They want to form their own church. This made King James I very angry. He did not want them to form their own church, and he has a lot of them arrested. Others left to go to Holland, and then they decided in 1620 to set sail for America. So they aboard the Mayflower ship, and they come over with 101 passengers. They arrive in Plymouth, Massachusetts on Plymouth Rock and write the Mayflower Compact. Very important, first written document in the New World. They're going to have direct democracy. That means all adult males can vote on any issue, every issue. William Bradford is named the governor of their colony, and they're going to celebrate the first Thanksgiving with Squanto and other natives, which becomes the first Thanksgiving. All right, picture of that. Oh, here's Lord Baltimore from Maryland. Forgot him. Sorry, Lord Baltimore. Here is Maryland Toleration Act that he puts in place in Baltimore, Maryland. And here is the first Thanksgiving. Okay, Squanto and other natives celebrating with the Pilgrims. Okay, they are a form of a Puritan, those who separate. The other form of Puritans are in Massachusetts Bay. So they stay in England, but then King Charles takes the throne, and opposition against them turns pretty nasty. So John Winthrop had earlier been granted a charter to set up a colony called the Massachusetts Bay Company. He decides to set out with his Puritans from England with over 900 passengers. So they have more than the Pilgrims. They land in Massachusetts and establish the capital of Boston. Winthrop is chosen as the first governor, and he says, "We shall be like a city upon a hill." So to prove that, he says, we will be Christian, we will reach out to others and be the shining light that they should look down upon, or look up to, I should say. Here's the city on the hill of Boston, and they're looking down at everyone else, and the idea is that everyone should be like them, okay? They establish a representative government. They collect taxes to support the church. So no separation of church and state here. They regulate behavior. No adultery, no blasphemy, no drunkenness. No other religions were tolerated. Anyone who went against them were called heretics, and these people would be banished. Such as Roger Williams, who said colonists had no right to claim Indian land without paying for it. They throw him out. He also says the government shouldn't collect taxes to give to the church. Also, Ann Hutchinson leads Bible studies in her house. She says you don't need a minister. She could do it herself. Blasphemous that a woman would say that, okay? So this is also, by the way, where if you had to read the Scarlet Letter in English, this is the group, Massachusetts Bay, the Puritans, so strict. No adultery, no blasphemy, no drunkenness at all, okay? So you need to go back, answer your essential questions right here, and I will wrap it up. Thanks, guys.